Hello everyone. So in this session, we'll be continuing with the internal control chapter. So in the last session, we covered about what is internal control, the relevance, the limitations, the objective, and also what is the composition of internal control. So here we'll be continuing with what are the different components of internal control that is required to be implemented in a particular entity. So telling about the components, basically the components of internal control is divided into five. One, starting with the control environment, then it have the control activities, then the risk assessment process, then the information communication and the monitoring. So each and every process has its own importance and relevance within the internal control system. So we'll start with the control environment. So before that, I'll start with a real life example. So, like all of you, when you were in school or when we were in school, there was a procedure. There are lots of rules that is defined by the school. We have in our school handbook or the diary, whatever we call, we have all the rules that is laid down by the school. What are the rules and regulations with respect to the school, especially with respect to morning assemblies, with respect to full being in full uniform, taking a day off, getting the leave letter from the parents. We have lots and lots of policies and procedures that is defined by the school. Say for example, they have a separate set of procedures with respect to attendance. This much number of days should be present, else you will not be allowed to write the exam. Or you should be in school by around 8:30 before the first bell or before the second bell or before the assembly. If you are coming after the assembly, you have to get a gate pass or you have to pay a penalty. Say 5 days you're coming continuously late to the class, then you will have to pay some fine. Or say you are not coming in full uniform, you are not coming in silence for the morning assembly, then there will be different kinds of disciplinary actions or regulations or procedures that is put forward by the school, right? Either you'll be taken to principal or you'll be asked to bring your parents to school, ask them to talk with the teachers. Say if you are failing in one subject or you are scored less for one subject, then your parents has to meet the teachers. There will be n number of procedures, n number of policies, rules, regulations. It is all defined by the management, school management. Each and every student who is studying in that school has to abide by those processes, all the policies, all the procedures. Any deviation from that might um, give rise to some kind of penalties or punishments. Similarly, the same situation you can apply here. Here, the control environment is nothing but the governance structure. What is the governance structure? What are the different policies? What are the procedures? What are the processes? What are the different kinds of management attitude towards any kind of control labs? Everything together comes under your control environment. The entire environment which actually gives the right kind of a scenario, right kind of a place for curbing any kind of misstatements or providing the right platform for internal control. It will be your control environment. So we'll first go to what is a control environment. Control environment will be including your governance, your management functions, as I said. What is the attitude of the particular management or those charged with governance? What are the actions that is taken by that? In the school example, what are the different kinds of penalties? What are the punishments? What are the other consequences if one of the rules are not being complied or one of the rules are being deviated? What happens if you break something in your school laboratory? All these things will come again under your control environment in audit. Your attitude, the general actions that is taken by the management and those charged with governance. And what happens is this control environment actually it will be setting a tone for the internal control, or it will actually control the attitude of the people working in the organization. Say these kind of policies or procedures, once it is defined by the organization, say in school also, your attitude or the attitude of the students will be based on those. You will be going and attending, make sure that you will attend at reach the school before 8 o'clock or 8:30. It is because of the controls or because of the procedures that is defined by the school. So again, it will be setting a tone for the organization, influences the control consciousness of the people. Now, What are the elements? Elements is what? How the control environment is put into effect, or how it is made sure that the control environment is made as strict as possible, or it provides the necessary supervision to make sure that the control is effective. One is proper communication with the management and the employees, and making sure there is a proper ethical values or integrity is implemented within the organization. People within the organization have ethical values. There is a kind of integrity. There is a kind of uh, truthfulness or honesty between the employees or within the organization of the particular employee. Or we can say stewardship of the employees. They themselves are made to feel that they are valuable to the organization, but at the same time, the organization is making sure that the particular employees exhibit integrity and ethical values in all the levels of operation. And commitment, whatever they are following the procedures, they are committed to achieve the same, achieve or make sure that it is consistently applied. Then, how the rules and responsibilities and authority is allocated to the employees, the way in which they are allocated. Say the roles and responsibilities and authority is allocated based on the experience, technical skill, competence of the particular employee. It is not as per any kind of favoritism or any kind of a bias. So those people who are eligible to be in that particular position or that particular authoritative position are there. It is only on the basis of the merit, skill and experience. And similarly, how about the HR policies, how human resource policies and practices? Any kind of deviation from the entity's policies, any kind of leave or any kind of policies with respect to fraud, how the entity or company is dealing with that, what kind of repercussions the particular employees has to face when such things are being encountered, or things are being done by the employees, or is there any kind of a motivational factor to commit fraud? That means there is no proper controls, whether there is no proper monitoring or review. What about the organizational structure? What about the governance structure? How the employees are made to feel within the organization, proper rewards and recognitions are there, so that there is no kind of motivation or pressure for the employees to commit fraud or any kind of error. Then participation by, it is not that only the management is just overviewing or overseeing the operations and the employees, but there should be proper interference from those charged with governance at regular or maybe stipulated intervals to see that they are also in line with the entity's operation and they understand the employees and the organization as well. So all these, again, the operating style of the management, everything comes into a control environment. Similar to a school, whatever example I have told, the same thing comes to a control environment. The governance structure, the attitude and the operating style of the management, the policies and procedures that is defined by the particular management, the participation by those charged with governance, about the policies, HR policies, about the assignment of roles and responsibilities, functional and operational responsibilities, bifurcation, everything comes under this. Now, what about control activities? Now, second component is control activities. What are control activities? Same thing, we can go to a real life example, the same school example I'll tell you. In the school example, I told you what are the rules, regulations, everything that is put forward by the school, whatever the students have to follow. Now, say for example, morning assembly. There is a time before which you have to enter the school gate. Say for example, it is 8:30. That means before the first bell. Maybe after the first bell, if you come, then you have to wait in a particular area, and maybe before the second bell, after the second bell, if you come, there will have be a particular waiting area where you have to wait, and the teacher or the particular person or the class monitor will be coming and giving you a lecture and then asking you not to repeat the same thing again the next day and come on correct time. So all these things will be given. So now there will be a set of activities, right, in order to make sure that whatever, even though there is a control environment, these control environment policies, procedures are actually put into effect. They have defined the policies, they have defined the delegation of authorities, but whether this is actually put into existence, physically it is there or it is actually implemented or not, will be taken care by the control activities. how the control environment or whatever is there in the control environment are put into practice. Make sure that the each and every aspect of control environment is actually there or actually in work. I mean, actually put into work. Those things will be constituted by the control activities. Say, for example, in your morning assembly, each and every student will be asked to go in a line. They'll be asked to stand up. They'll be asked to follow a line for the assembly. So each and every, and that also class by class, they'll be allowed for the assembly. So each and every class will be allowed. So after one class goes, the next class or next division students will be going in a line, and they will be standing according to the height. Then again, all the students, only those who are in full uniform, will be allowed for attending the assembly. Those latecomers will have a separate area where they have to stand until the assembly is over. So all these things will be monitored by some person, right? So each and every class will have some kind of a class representative or leader or monitor, whatever it is. So they will be actually making sure that everyone is going in a line. There will be another set of scouts and guides, girls or boys, who are actually verifying that there is proper discipline maintained during the time of an assembly. Another set of students who are there to check whether you are in full uniform, maybe your house leaders or maybe even the teachers. So another set of students, the teachers, who are making sure that the latecomers are there, they're standing at a proper place and they're not interrupting the assembly and coming just like that. And there will be another set again to go and tell the students that they should be coming on the right time, or else they will have to go and meet the principal and then come. And they will be again asking the watchman to, and there will be also security at the entrance who will be stopping the students who come after 9 o'clock. So after 9 o'clock, any student comes, it is they have to make sure that they first have to go get a written pass from the principal or teacher, show it to the security, then only they'll be able to, some kind of a procedure will be there. So all these are your control activities, whatever activities that is taking place to make sure that the control or necessary control is put into place or implemented well. Now, similarly, in an audit or in a particular entity, we have a set of control activities. So what are they? These are all the policies and procedures that help ensure that the particular management directives are carried out. So whatever, in order to carry out that, whatever I put into place activities, these are your control activities. So this could be either at the organization level or at the functional level. So it could be with related to implementation of policies or with respect to each and every roles and responsibilities allocated for each and every function. It could be at both the levels. Say, for example, at the organizational level, any violation of the policy or any kind of fraud that is happening, with there will be proper surveillance system, or any kind of any person, unauthorized person that is entering the facility, or any unauthorized person or a third party who is external to the organization, he is trying to enter the organization or the facility. So first thing is, he must have a swipe card, he must do a biometric, there should be a security check. So first he'll be given a guest pass. Only then he'll be asked to write down his name, the time of entering the facility, what purpose he is entering. So all these are your one kind of a control activity. Once he is once he has entered everything, then he'll be given a guest ID card. A guest ID card which he can use only for entering the facility and coming out. That too, not that particular ID card will not give him access to all the sections or all the departments of the particular organization, only to few areas. Say, for example, your cafeteria or maybe your waiting area, only those areas, not to the actual areas where the work takes place. So again, they are maintaining confidentiality like that. So that is one kind of a organizational level control activity. Say functional level, one of the person has access to a particular system, he is given only the access with respect to what role he is doing. Say, for example, there is a programmer, there is a tester, or there is a audit manager, there is a manager, there is an accountant. So accountant will be given access to create, and also he can view that. As a senior manager or an accounts manager, he has a access to create, he has the access to view, he can take printout, he can also make changes. So here a number of access given to him is more. So it could be either at the functional level based on the roles and responsibilities allocated, or it could be at the organizational level. And when are these particular controls activities implemented, or what is their relevance, or how what are control activities that is relevant to an audit? That means they are mostly implemented when it is relating to some kind of significant risk, or those risks for which your substantive procedures, we have already discussed two types, substantive procedures and control procedures. Substantive procedures are not able to provide some sufficient and appropriate evidence. In such cases also, I go for control activities. Control activities mostly related to significant risk, and in those places where your substantive procedures alone are not able to provide appropriate and sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. So already we discussed two types, test of details and test of control, substantive procedures and control procedures. So in that, the internal control procedures is what I'm telling, control activities. Now, what are significant risk? Now, what are the other factors that are relevant, control activities that are relevant? One is those with related to significant risk. For those with related to which the significant substantive procedures are not able to provide a appropriate evidence. The others are what? Other activities which the auditor considers in his judgment are relevant. Sometimes, even though there are no kind of such predefined activities within the organization, sometimes the auditor through his experience might come up with some kind of activities which he thinks is necessary to be implemented in the organization, or which he thinks is appropriate for that particular situation. That also has a relevance. Now, depending on the auditor's part, as a part of his risk assessment process also, he might come up with that. Now, what are the different significant risks that is associated with a particular organization? Significant risk are those risks which are inherent in nature. So some risk there is always there. Whatever precautions you take, whatever control measures you implement, whatever how effective, even though the controls are very effective also, there is a small percentage of risk that still exists. You cannot completely eliminate it. You can only reduce such risk. Such risks are called as your significant risk. So significant risk are those inherent risks which cannot be completely eliminated. It can only be reduced to a appropriate level. So because of these inherent risks, which they have a higher likelihood of those risks from happening, or they have a higher it could pose a higher magnitude of misstatement. So either of these it can happen. Either it could have a higher likelihood of occurrence, or it could pose a higher magnitude of potential misstatement. If both these characters are there for a particular internal risk, then it will constitute a significant risk. So significant risk are those internal risks which has a higher likelihood of both a higher likelihood of occurrence and at the same time the higher magnitude of potential misstatements. So if both the things are there, then it will be constituting a significant risk. Now, what constitutes significant risk? So normal your control procedures will be defined for your regular routine transactions. So any kind of material misstatement can be due to both fraud as well as error. So what is the auditor's duty? Auditor's duty to make sure that the financial statements are free from any material misstatement due to fraud or due to error at the financial statement level or at the assertion level, and give an opinion, or depending on the assessed response, come up with such kind of response to make sure that the total risk of material misstatement is reduced to an acceptable level. That is a main objective of an audit. So make sure that the total risk is reduced to an acceptable level. Now, risk of material misstatement can be due to error or fraud, but those due to fraud is being classified as significant risk because they have a high likelihood of occurrence, and even if it occurs, the amount or the total amount that is associated with it could be material. So it could be a potential misstatement. So the risk of material misstatement due to fraud. Then what? Transactions which are unusual in nature, or those are non-routine transactions. So routine transactions will be captured by the internal control system. We are aware of that. But what about non-routine transactions? Those which does not occur on a regular basis, but they are having significant amounts associated with it. with the maybe it could be with the related parties, sister concerns, with the relatives of KMP, managerial persons, or any person who is within employee of that company. It could be anyone, but they are significant amounts are involved, and they are not unusual transactions, huge amounts with unusual transactions. So such kind of transactions will not be easily captured by the internal control. So they fall under the category of your significant risk. Then complex transactions. It need not be only unusual transactions, regular transactions also, but it is very complex. Say overseas transactions involving foreign currency transactions, your hedging contracts, lots of complex transactions are there. These not, though they are not unusual transactions, but it is the way in which it is accounted involves some kind of complexities. Such transactions also comes under your transactions where there is significant risk. Then those associated with judgments. Risk associated with judgments means what? Any kind of judgments that the management is coming up with. Say for example, your accounting estimates, your provisions, your writing of amounts to be written off, your percentages, all these things, your fair value calculation. So all these things again involve some amount of subjectivity or judgment, and this judgment will be mostly by the management. It might not be always correct. So auditor, on the basis of the audit and previous experiences with the audit, he might be able, even with the current situation of the entity and the previous verification of the previous financial statements, understanding the trend, the nature of payment, repayment, how the revenues are recognized, he might be able to contribute better to those particular. So whatever judgment, say for example, the amount of writing of amount of provision that is put forward by the management, say for example, bad debt is 5%, but on verification of the previous financial statements, the auditor is saying it is not 5%, depending on the type of repayment or with respect to the company's profile, it should be 20%. So this kind of risk could also be there with respect to judgment. Again, this falls under your significant risk. Next is with respect to recent significant developments. Say is there is any kind of a recent economic or accounting developments, any kind of new laws that has been put. So when the GST Act came into picture, every company who has having that particular turnover limit for GST applicability has to comply with the GST procedures. So whether any significant procedures have come, and whether there is any kind of a economic or accounting or any kind of a regulatory compliance that need to be followed by the company, which a company is not, again it falls under your significant risk. So your significant risk are those inherent risks which has a higher likelihood of occurrence and also higher magnitude of potential misstatements, and it includes your non-routine, unusual and related party transactions, complex transactions, those misstatements due to fraud, and also any kind of risk associated with judgments and recent significant developments. Now we'll see what are the control activities. So control activities, the first one comprises of your authorization part. So what is the authorization? Any transaction, each and every transaction has to be recorded, and the source of data from which the transactions are recorded has to be genuine and reliable. So proper controls has to be implemented in that, and it should be properly authorized by the management or the person who has the authority. That is the first thing. Second is segregation of duties. Segregation means what? Proper bifurcation, clear demarcation of duties, roles and responsibilities should be there. Say for example, I have the authority to approve the purchase order. Once I get the purchase requisition, I have the authority to review the purchase orders and approve the same. I should not be having the authority to place a purchase order or to receive the goods and to make the entry in the books of accounts. What happens if I do everything together? If I am raising a purchase order, I am approving the purchase order, I am placing the order, I am receiving the goods, and I am making the goods entry in the book. So it is not necessary that I actually place the order. Once the approval of that particular purchase order is there, I get the fund, or the fund is released for going ahead or for making the payment to that particular vendor with respect to that particular purchase order, I need not even actually make the actual purchase. I can just raise the purchase order, keep it approved, then I can embezzle or I can take away the amount that is diverted to be diverted, or amount that is required to be paid to the vendor, because I am the one who is manipulating, I am the one who is writing the books, I am the one who is making the entries. So I can make the entries accordingly, and there could be chances for embezzlement of cash or maybe diversion of cash in such cases. So segregation of duties is very much necessary, or it could be also with respect to, say for example, any kind of a amount that is received from the debtor. Say for example, the amount has already been received, but the particular person in finance, he has diverted that particular amount for his personal use, and he is writing off the amount without the approval of the senior person. What happens? Actually, the person has been, the amount has been received by the company, but that has been diverted for his personal use. But since he has the authority to collect as well as make an entry and to authorize, he is doing everything together, and the amount is now used for his personal purpose rather than for company's account. So segregation of duties and authorization is very much important. Then what about physical controls? What are physical controls? Physical controls are those controls with respect to safeguarding of your assets. So what are the controls in place to safeguard the assets? To protect the assets, safeguard the facility from unauthorized entry. Only the persons or the employees or the staff or the persons who are related or supposed to be entering the facility are entering the facility. Data protection, how the data, source code, all the programs are being protected. No unauthorized persons can access the data. No data leakage. Data is confidential. The data coming to the system is consistent. All these things again come under your physical control. Your biometric, your swipe cards, all these things are coming under your physical controls of data. Regular investigations and corrective actions that is being taken by the management, and also it could be any kind of date, what date that is being entered in the books of accounts, but what date a particular activity or particular sales or transaction has taken place. Again, to check that there should be proper physical controls. Then any kind of review, like say for example a review of the financial or activities performance, all these things will come under your, so these will be coming under your performance reviews, whereas in your physical controls, your safeguarding of asset, protection of assets, safeguarding of facilities, then data protection, preventing the loss of data, accessing, who can access what. Then also how the theft and embezzlement of cash diversion is prevented within the organization. Counting, how whether the inventories are counted at periodic intervals, assets are physically verified, and also it is compared with the recorded ones in the books. If there is any deviation, it is made to the notice of the management. All these are coming under your physical controls. Performance reviews includes your timely management supervision. It also includes corrective actions and investigations that is taken by surprise checks, internal check, and then also how whether the particular entity is performing with respect to the actual actual performance versus the ones that is that has to be, like say for example with respect to your budgets or with respect to your forecast, prior periods, or within the prior quarter, how the company is actually performing with respect to a set of standards. So how analysis and review of that again comes under your, again your appraisal functions and review of your financial and activity performance. All this comes under your performance reviews. Now information processing. Information processing means what? How the information is recorded, how the information is being posted, what is the source of information, how the information is being transferred to that particular, how it is journalized, and finally how it is posted to the ledger. So in order to make sure that the data is consistent, there should be proper controls. So here we can say about two controls, application and general controls. So application controls are those controls that are specific to one particular application. Say for example, I have software for calculating the total tax to be paid. So I have certain kind of controls in that particular, within that particular application, that who can access that application, who can enter the data, who can change the data, who can view the data. It is with respect to that particular application. Say for example, I have some controls like someone who is entering the facility or who is entering the particular workplace. These are your general controls. It is applicable to the entity or organization as a whole. It is not limited to one particular application. Say for example, your CCTV, it could be your general control application. Say for example, in your house you might lock your refrigerator. That is a particular, or that is only applicable to that particular equipment. Say for example, refrigerator, that is again an application control. So in your controls, there are two. One is your general and one is your application controls. So again, information processing should be such that to ensure that the source of data from where the transactions originate, or where you are recording and collecting and posting the transactions, are genuine and consistent and reliable, accurate. So for that you have two controls, general and application controls. Now last is your peer reviews by the people who are working within the organization to make sure that it is everything is done. There is a kind of a supervision or monitoring that is happening on a regular basis. Now after this you have something called as a risk assessment. Similarly, your risk assessment process, even in your schools, when you tell when you are looking into the example, school example, whatever I give you, so there is a chance, like there are whatever rules that is being implemented, whatever activities or whatever regular morning assembly checking, there will be names being written down. Whatever happens, there will be certain kind of risk that is bound to happen. You know, certain people will surely they'll be coming late to school. They will not be in school uniform. Whatever is there, there will be still some people who don't maintain a discipline in the assembly, who even after proper repetitive tests and coaching, everything happening, still there will be some people who is failing for the exams or board exams or whatever is it. So there is some kind of a risk. So the basic approach will be, I have to identify the risk. So before I come up with a control environment, control activity, their particular school or whatever it is, they should come up with an assessment process. What could be the possible risk, or even after implementing also there should be a risk assessment. That is a periodic activity. Assess the risk as and when it happens, as and when it is going to happen. So identify the risk. What is the relevance of such risk? What is the impact, or what is the significance of that risk in the financial statements? What is the relevance of that risk with respect to financial reporting process? Identify significance of the risk, materiality of the amount involved, materiality of the transactions involved, whichever account balances it is effective, is it pervasive in nature? All these things again I have to assess significance of the risk. What is the likelihood of occurrence? Is it a one-time procedure, or is there any chance of every time? Constant monitoring is required for those. Every time, in absence of any kind of a monitoring, this could happen. Say for example, you have someone at home, say for example a maid. You are asking them to wash everything and then do the cooking. Sometimes only when you are present she'll do the washing. When you are absent or when you are just away, she might again resort to the normal procedure of taking a vessel and do the cooking without even washing it or without even cleaning it properly. So in such kind of risk, constant monitoring is required. It is not that which is a one-time process you tell and then it is being obeyed. No. So what is the likelihood of occurrence? What are the actions to be taken? So finally, if something happens, what are the precautionary measures, or how it is detected, or what is the compensating controls? There should be some controls. If such controls fail, how to mitigate the risk? Mitigate means reduce the severity of the risk. So I have to put in place some kind of a compensatory or mitigating controls in order to, like a backup control, to make sure that such kind of misstatements or mishappenings are not happening. Clear? This is your risk assessment process. Then comes your information and communication and monitoring. Information and communication means what? What are the difference? Say in the school example itself, once everything is done, your control activities, control environment, risk assessment, what is the final thing? You will be communicating those people who are coming late, or those who have violated who are not disciplined, you'll be communicating those names to the school principal, or you will be reporting those names to the class teacher. So there will be some kind of information and communication. So again, this similarly in audit also, you have your information communication with respect to internal control. What are the classes of transaction? What are the procedures that is adopted by the particular entity in initiating and recording the transactions, how it is processing and correcting if there is any kind of misstatements, how it is being journalized and transferred and transferred to the ledgers and reported in the financial statements. Again, those procedures has to be communicated. Then, what are the accounting records? What are the accounts? What are the supporting information based on which your financials are prepared? What are the specific accounts that is taken into consideration? All these things, how the information system is capturing the events, any kind of events that is exception reports or any kind of logs, any kind of risk that is associated, how the particular information system is throwing the error, capturing such events, and how the financial reporting process is designed to prepare the entity's financials, everything. Controls with respect to journals, ledgers, posting, trial balance, reconciliation, reviews, everything will be coming under your information and communication part. And again, communication part, there will be two types of communication by the auditor. One with respect to those charged with governance and the management, and one with respect to external parties, that is your regulatory authorities. So again, communication, it could be with respect to the manuals, reading the manuals, delegation of authorities. All these are part of your information and communication process. Now, the last part, we have come to the last part, that is the monitoring part. Last but one part, monitoring part. In the monitoring, how you are achieving. So even in risk assessment, I think in the previous session, first session of risk assessment, we have already covered the different methods of risk assessment. If you remember, it is like inquiry with the management, inquiry with the in-house legal counsel, inquiry with the employees, observation, verification of documents and records, inspection. All these things are different risk assessment procedures. Now, monitoring. How is monitoring achieved? Monitoring means just to verify how the internal controls are effective or not. They have implemented, but I have to check at a regular basis whether the internal controls are working properly or not. Whether it is doing its duty of preventing, detection and correction. So preventing, detecting and correcting, whether the duty of the internal control is being effectively delivered has to be monitored. Periodic review is necessary. So this is with respect to verifying the effectiveness of the control performance over time. Then necessary remedy, suppose if there is any kind of a lacuna or any kind of break in service, what has to happen? There should be some kind of a remedial action that has to be taken place. Constant progress or improvement has to be monitored. So taking the necessary actions. Then how the management implements by regular management supervision, supervisory activities, separate kind of evaluations, checklist, whether the performance is being performance of the employees is being adhering to the required standards, best practices being incorporated, whether the best practices are implemented, standardizing the records and documents. Then version control, any changes made anywhere in the process, it has to be documented. That version changes has to be mentioned periodically. Say even in documents when we prepare, we have the version control, that is different versions we maintain. What was the first thing, how it has changed. So we can actually understand the change in the process flow when we are looking, towards the end we can understand the change in the process flow. Similarly, any communication with respect to external parties, with the regulatory authorities or maybe with the customers, what kind of customers, what kind of complaints are being received, what are the points for improvement, whether the complaints that is received from the customer, it is being acted upon by the respective departments or it is just being logged, it is kept, what time it is being resolved, whether the user experience has been sought the next time, and whether the same kind of complaint or same kind of area for improvement is coming from the particular customer again for that particular product. So what are the controls for that? Everything again comes under your monitoring. Again, how is the management getting involved with the operations? Is it only allocation of the responsibilities and only viewing the reports on a yearly or quarterly basis, or there is a bi-weekly meeting that is taking place, there is client calls that is being taking place, or they are constantly involving in the operations where there is a team meeting happening every week or on a monthly basis. All these things again comes under your monitoring. Now, the last part of this particular monitoring of controls is, if the particular entity or particular company has an internal audit function. Say not all companies may have internal audit function. Some companies have internal audit function, some may not have. So when the company is having an internal audit function, how does it affect the responsibility of the auditor? If the company has an internal audit function, then the auditor has to make sure that what is the responsibility of the internal audit function there, what is the position, to whom are they reporting. Are they reporting to one of the accountants, or they are reporting to the CFO? Higher the position of the internal audit in a particular organization, more reliable will be the data and the controls are effective. So what is the position of the internal audit in a particular internal audit function in a particular entity, organizational structure, and what are the activities that is being performed by the internal audit function. Say they are, whether they are fulfilling their responsibilities, or whether only no complete checking or verification is happening by the internal audit. Then in such case, what happens, the auditor who is coming, he has to make sure that the internal control is not very effective, no proper audit or verification has taken place, so his nature, extent and the timing of the audit procedures for the auditor increases. Or say for example, the internal auditor is a person without the required skill set or required competence and experience. That means more liability has to be placed by the external auditor while auditing the statements. So all these comes under your monitoring of controls with respect to if the particular entity has an internal audit function. Now the last part is whether a particular control environment in itself can it make sure, or will it be an absolute deterrent to fraud? Can I may tell that I have the company has a perfectly effective control environment so that there is no chance of any fraud happening? No, I cannot tell, because I already told you there is always an inherent risk, that is where risk, that possibility of internal risk is there. Internal risk can only be reduced, it can never be eliminated, it can only be mitigated. The severity can be reduced, but it can never be eliminated completely. So see, even though there is a satisfactory control environment, it can reduce the risk. It will definitely help to reduce the risk of fraud. It will reduce, but it can never be an absolute deterrent to fraud. There could be some deficiencies in control environment, and because of which the internal controls may not be effective. And in relation to a particular fraud, it is not that all the controls are designed taking into care all the frauds. There could be any new fraud that is coming up also. So in such cases, the control may not be implemented or may not be effective in addressing such fraud. In such cases, again, what happens is there could be deficiencies in internal control. In such cases, while then a control environment means this satisfactory control environment, though it does not provide an absolute deterrent to fraud, it will help. It does not, even if it doesn't provide it doesn't prevent, detect or correct any kind of material misstatement, but it actually helps a particular auditor in evaluating the risk, helps in evaluating the risk of material misstatement. So a satisfactory control environment is not an absolute deterrent to fraud. It is never, because there could be any new frauds that is coming up. So any deficiencies in the control environment could actually undermine the effectiveness of control, but it actually helps the auditor to evaluate the risk of material misstatements. And also, once the risk of material misstatement is evaluated properly, the auditor can plan the audit procedures. He can plan what is the timing, extent and nature of the audit procedures to be applied in order to arrive at the, or in order to complete the audit. So in this session, we covered what is controls, what is the relevance of controls, objective, composition, limitation, and what are the different components of internal control. So we have one more session where we will be completing what are the different methods. Say for example, your flow charts, your narrative records, everything. So we'll see that in the next session.